Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jay, and this is Homeschool Your Kids podcast. And today I have not one, but two Black men who are paving a new narrative for Black fathers. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So, go ahead. Who's going to start, Jason or Richard?
I'll go ahead and start it up. So thank you for having us here. I'm Jason Esters, one half of the dynamic duo that is Black Men Homeschool, a brother podcasts. And go ahead.
Richard Smith, and just excited to be here with you to represent Black Men Homeschool and just share a little bit about what we're all about.
Yes, of course. Black Men Homeschool. What is it? What is that y'all keep saying? What is the Black Men Homeschool? They do? What's that?
Well, let my brother Jason break it down.
When you say it like that, it sounds like, yo, where's this coming from? But part of it is really, it's a simple phrase, right? Just that, hey, black men homeschool, meaning that Black men are concerned about the education that their children are getting. Black men are invested in what their children are learning, and Black men also have a say and have agency when it comes to helping to build Black girls and boys, Black children into being ready for the world that they're getting ready to engage in. And part of what Richard and I have been doing is on our podcast, we really just get together, talk about some of the things that are of interest to us as Black men who are currently homeschooling our children, Black men of faith, and also Black men who are committed to the liberation of Black people within our context, our local communities, but also nationally and globally. And part of it is also a declaration that says, "Hey, that we're here." So we recognize that representation matters in this too. To challenge the narrative around Black men's involvement that we oftentimes hear, or the lack thereof that we oftentimes hear, but also as a clarion call to other Black men that are out there that says, "Yo, you're not alone," because oftentimes it can feel like for the brothers that are out there that are working every day, that are invested in their kids, that are invested in what they're learning, whether they homeschool or not, a lot of times they'll feel like they're alone. And our response is, bro, you're not. We out here.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And that was really one of the main driving factors for us coming together is that, we saw each other and we knew about some other guys, but we recognized there was nothing like this. For Black men that was out there to be able to just connect, hear from other Black men, and to talk about resources and things that would be helpful to us. So Jason and I connected and got together, and we just started doing that thing. And we're excited to be able to have that platform to be able to share and reach out to brothers like us.
Of course. So is Black Men Homeschool, is it just a podcast, or do you also have like an organization? Y'all lead a co-op? Is there a whole like group of y'all? Like what? Tell us more. Tell us more.
So yeah, that's the vision to one day, that moment in Malcolm X when they have to go visit the brother in the hospital, and they get to the hospital and all the men are walking out there together, and then he does his hand like this.
Cool.
So yeah, that's the vision. But right now, essentially, it's just us and our podcast. We also have a website, and like Richard was saying, our goal is to talk about the issues that are important to us, but also to share the resources that we've come across, whether they be materials that we're using, books that we're using, people that we've met that we can share with a larger homeschool community. One thing we love about the homeschool community that exists right now, especially for those of us from the African diaspora, is that it's been really welcoming and everybody shares. But one thing we've also noticed is that as men, sometimes we have our ears and eyes tuned to something that some of the larger community might not be thinking about. So we have opportunity to share some of those things with people. We it in terms of making it a movement, right? Because I was just jesting with that a little bit earlier. Like, one of the cool things about having the podcast and being able to engage with people on social media is that informally we can connect with other people on a more personal level. We try to do a Facebook group at one point in time. Maybe we'll go back to that, but it's been really good to just learn about people, learn who they are, like yourself, and then just be able to connect with them as real people.
Indeed. That's what it's about. That's that representation. People have to see other people that look like them doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's why y'all representation means so much to me, because like, I know there's Black dads out here homeschooling. By all means, I know it, but we don't see them. It's like they busy. They busy. But to know and to see that representation, and you all are using your voice to amplify that representation, I love it. It's like y'all are doing, this is revolutionary, of course.
Appreciate that. And that's what we're trying to do, is just trying to be a voice out there for men like us. I had to say, like, for me, it was seeing my brother Jason and seeing how he's working with his children that inspired me. I was like, I gotta watch this brother. And then and then we became pretty much brothers, and wanted to kind of replicate that for other brothers.
Yeah, big time. Like, the dope thing about Richard, like, when we first started, I met Richard because I was an interloper at a homeschool co-op. So for those of y'all who are listening, keep in mind that when dads are the ones to take their kids to the co-op, and it's mostly moms, like, that's a little bit of trepidation for the dads. Like, dads don't exactly know how to get in. And of course, there's always this one little moment where, I'm bringing my kid to the co-op and all the moms are in there talking, and they're looking at me like, who is this guy? Yes.
Oh yeah.
I gotta make sure I put the kids out in front. So they just know, everything is cool, copacetic, got the kids here.
Mm-hmm.
So I initially met Richard's wife and kids at the co-op, right? And had an opportunity for a little bit later for the two of us to get together, and we just hit it off. And it wasn't that we were sitting talking about homeschooling; we were sitting and talking about everything else in the world.
Nice.
Talking about sports, talking about faith, talking about politics, just talking about everything. And one of the things that we wanted to do was, because that was a good, generative, safe space for us just to talk, chop it up, be men and share. And in the podcast, we just wanted to replicate that.
Exactly.
Because part of being community is also being comfortable.
Yes.
With one another. And that's not necessarily something you could force. It's something that's going to be relatively organic. But being able to share that with a larger community, with people, that's like really, really cool.
Indeed. When I speak on homeschooling, I speak on the fact that homeschooling isn't just, removing your children from traditional school and bringing them home and having them with you 24. Like, homeschooling is just being an active leader in your children's educational journey, no matter what the placement is, in my eyes. And so with how you started with your introduction and saying, like, Black men can be in this role and lead this role and be confident in the role that they are in. A lot of us are kind of caught up on the, oh, I ain't go to college, or I ain't got this degree, or I'm not. It's like that. None of that matters, because, like you said, also resources are available everywhere. You don't have to know all the subjects. You don't have to have a 3 or 4 year old already talking about, oh, well, I ain't gonna be able to teach them calculus. We ain't got to worry and jump that far. Like, we can start with where you are. How did you all get on the journey of homeschooling? How did y'all even get here? How did say, oh, you know what, we gonna homeschool our kids? Like, how did this happen?
Richard started before me, so I'm gonna defer to him first.
Okay.
Okay. So it's interesting because I never thought about this. My wife didn't think about homeschooling until we had our son. And when we had our son, he has several health issues that we were concerned about as far as going to school. So that was one piece. But another piece of it is that my wife has a master's in education. So you just talked about you don't have to have degrees. That's true. But she had a master's education. She's been a teacher from K through 12. And then, I'm in education as well. So we just looked at each other one day, to make a long story short. And it was like, we can teach our children, we can, lead the education of our son and then our daughter and then our third child, our son as well. And we decided, well, let's try it. Let's see how we do. And it's just been growing from there. And to be able to be in the driver's seat of our child's education and their learning journey, and to be able to share with them not only the things that they would learn in a brick and mortar school, but also to share with them about their history, to take them to places where we could talk about the history right there while we were standing there with them. That's just something that has been meaningful for us, and it's just been a great expression of love, of just cherishing our time together and just having experiences together as a family.
Yes. Jason, how did we get on this journey?
Oh man. So my wife and I, we're also educated. Right? I teach primarily writing and ELA, English, and history, and my wife teaches math. So we had always, from the
Look
time
at that balance. Can I talk on that balance real quick though? That is beautiful. Y'all got me.
what God puts together, let no man, like it works. It works.
Indeed.
It works. But from the time we met in our early 20s, we had said to ourselves, "Hey, we should have a school. We should have a school." And this was before we had thought about marriage. We just said, "Hey, we see some synergies. We think about the world the same way. It'd be cool to have a school together." In our minds, we both were teaching in public school. We're both certified to be high school teachers. So we were thinking, "Hey, a brick and mortar school is in our future. We'll work together." Those kind of things, right? Fast forward to young adult drama, finally getting married, finally having kids, all that kind of stuff. My wife begins a new job teaching at an independent school. She's teaching at the independent school, and in our minds, we say, "Hey, we just hit the lottery here." Because even though we had been committed to public schools, we said, "Oh, for our kids, it would be nice to do something else." So once she got the job at the independent school, we were thinking to ourselves, "Okay, this is cool. You have the job there. We can get the discount on the kids. They can all go to the independent school." So our oldest son has an interview. He's a kindergartner. They interview the kindergarten to see how he's going to fit for the class. Now, keep in mind, this is the school that my wife has just gotten her new contract for, but they need to interview. So they bring him to the interview, and I was not there. I wasn't present. I was at work. But the story that I get is that during the interview, he had an issue. He usually ate at a certain time every day. So when he got there and they're going through the interview, he's walking through the class. He's like, "Hey, when are we gonna eat? What time are we eating?" And he was stuck on that particular question. Now we knew that this might be an issue going in, so we said, "Hey, can we get a schedule of how things are going to go so we can prep him beforehand to let him know so he won't be asking all these questions." He was an inquisitive kid, so he's asking a lot of questions. So at the end of the interview, they're like, "Hey, we're thinking that we want to hold him back. So he wouldn't be in the kindergarten class."
Hold him back where?
He wouldn't be in the kindergarten class. We're going to put him in the preschool class. And I'm like, "Why?" "So he can learn kind of our structure and how things go and all these kind of things." So already in my mind, and my wife also, we're thinking, listen, if you think he's a discipline problem now,
right,
and you decide to put him in a preschool class where kids are learning their ABCs. My son already knows his ABCs. He can write his name. He can write down all the names of the states. He knows all the capitals. He can write down the names of the countries. if you think he's a discipline problem now, what is he going to be in a space where he's not being intellectually challenged, where he's already ahead of the class, where, and he's already vocal. So now, and if you're not familiar with the way independent schools work sometimes, a lot of times within independent schools, they're their own ecosystems. So those kids will stay in those schools for their entire duration of education. Mm-hmm. And it's easy for kids to get tracked into a certain role. They get stigmatized, and it's hard to break that stigma because of the insular nature of that culture. So we in there and we like, yo, they already trying to hold my kid back. And this is the school where my wife is teaching. So at that point, it was almost like, my wife is kind of like, why am I going to be here if my kids are going to be treated like that? And I'm kind of like, you know what? This ain't the move. And she said, you know what we should do? We should homeschool. The kids. And I'm like, yeah. Funny, we never thought about that before. We had always thought about educate children. We'd always thought about having our own school, but we had never thought about turning that to our own children within the space of the home that we had. But keep in mind, she had already had the contract. So I was like, you know what? I have a little bit of flexibility with my job. I'm an educator, but I was teaching at community college at the time. And, community colleges have a little bit of flexibility, so I could teach at night. So when we first started our homeschool journey, I was the principal educator. I was the principal teacher for the first couple of years because I could teach them during the day and I could work at night. And so that's what we did. And it is, by and large, the best decision we ever could have made. And I think it's interesting. It's interesting that, you can't sometimes, it's circumstances that present you with opportunities to think differently than the way that you think. You said something earlier, Jay, about what we do as being, what Richard and I do as being revolutionary. But anytime Black people teach themselves, it's a revolutionary act.
Indeed,
Every
it
single
is.
time throughout history, it's been a revolutionary act. Anytime we reach out to learn about the civilizations of Africa before colonization, it's a revolutionary act. Anytime that we reached out to teach ourselves within the context of a country who made it both criminal and a death sentence to teach one another, it was a revolutionary act. Anytime that we, and even if we fast forward into today, we're living in a time where it's easy to see there's a revolutionary act for us to teach us about ourselves. It's part of the continuum of education within the context framework of America, but also for Black people in general, right? And so I see homeschooling as just part of that larger tradition of us, when we're focused on, us building our own selves. It's part of that larger narrative of us taking on that agency and doing the thing that's going to be generative for us and for generations to come also.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's so true. That taking on the agency, you just reminded me, as you was talking about, Jason, as you was talking about where your son was, my son was reading by the age of 2. My wife had put in and some of the best practices that she learned, and he was already reading books. And we felt that one of the other reasons why we decided to homeschool, we felt that sending him into that system would cause him to go backwards or would hinder his growth. Yeah. As Jason was sharing, sometimes when we look at the educational system, it really wasn't structured for our children. It wasn't set up for our children to excel. And this is not to knock anyone. I know folks, they're supposed to have to send their children to, a brick and mortar school, and that's understandable. But even if we have to do that, just recognizing that we are still the main teacher of our children, they won't get a better education from anyone else, really, but us, because the system wasn't set up for our children to thrive there. So that was something else that we considered and thought about as well.
Indeed, especially being in the public school system, you definitely see the structure and how it's. Oh no, this really wasn't meant for us.
Right. But it's not just the public schools though. It's the way school is
set up. Yeah.
Some of us have been so conditioned with, middle class mentality that we think, oh, if we just get our kids out of the public school system, send them to parochial school, send them to independent school, send them to private school, that they're going to win. But that's not necessarily the truth, because it's the mentality that they build, that they instill in our children, that doesn't necessarily allow them to grow, to be creative, to believe that they also have that they are also going to have agency.
Indeed.
And so part of the issue, part of the issue is that, and I say this everywhere, but I think it's really important. I think every Black family should homeschool their children in some way. And maybe they can't take their children out of school, but they need to have a homeschool mentality, which is, hey, what are the things that I think are really important for them to learn? How am I going to make sure that they get that? Because we are ultimately in control. Now, that's not to say that they're not going to learn anything anywhere else. Sure, they will. The question is, what? What are they going to learn, right? Yeah, if you find a good school, and a school is good by whatever measure that you're using to evaluate it. You find a good school, and kudos to you. But that doesn't mean that your hands are off. You still have to be invested to see exactly what it is that they're given, because even if they're getting education, that doesn't mean that they're getting love. Because I think sometimes we'll equate, I can't be a teacher to my children because I only know so much. But nobody can love your children the way that you can love your children. And if they're learning through that love, then they're going to get something that they can't get anywhere else. Can we surround our children in an environment where, as they're learning, they're also being loved as they're learning? And I know it sounds, for some, it might sound a little wistful, but I think it's really, really important. I mean, because we think it's okay. We'll settle for our kids being surrounded by violence when it's convenient. Right? We'll settle, and I don't mean just physical violence. I mean, in some of these schools where you pay $20,000 a year or $40,000 a year, the mental and emotional violence that our kids encounter, is damaging to the point that they can't get out of it when they're older. But we'll say, well, because you carry it, because it carries a name with it, or because it opens some doors for you, it's going to be worth it. So we have to decide for ourselves, is it worth the sacrifice? Do I sacrifice the love of my children, love for my children, for what I think is an educational stepping stone? Or do I sacrifice the love that my children could be getting because it's more convenient for me to send them over here than me to try to figure out something else to do? And I don't want to, I don't want to point a finger at anybody, because the realities of having to work every day is real. But again, at some point in time, we have to say to ourselves, what am I willing to give up so that my children will be successful? It might not be during the hours of 8 to 3 when I have to send them over here, because it's compulsory, have to do it, they have to be somewhere. But maybe from 5 to 7, there's something that we have to do that I find that's really important for us to engage in education. Or maybe it's something that happens on the weekend. But as Richard said, if I take control, right, if I see myself as the head educator, as a head curator of my children's education, then that can open up an entirely new world for my kids.
You've given a lot there, and I love that you focused and honed in on the love aspect of it all, because that's where it all needs to begin, right? Love is what we need to guide this ship, that love is what brings your children back when they learn all this out, this information outside of your house. That love brings them back because they know that you're going to be able to receive and help them to work out whatever it is they've taken in. I talk a lot on relationships, building relationships, and I feel like homeschooling is definitely a relationship builder in general with your kids. It's like a partnership. It's a different level of respect that you have and show them. Like it's totally different. But welcoming that information to come back to you, welcoming your children to teach you.
Yeah. And it's very, very few people, and I may be making a generalization here, but I would say there's very few people that's going to teach your own children love in any way, right? I mean, yes, there's some great teachers out here that love children and all, but
of course,
that's that unique, that specified, tailor-made love for your own child in a way where you're teaching them to love themselves, to love their heritage, to love where they've come from. That's not something that is getting taught in schools. And what's often happening, we can even look at the data, is that our children that are in schools, they are not loving themselves. The depression has gone up, suicide has decreased. I mean, all these things that sometimes we maybe don't even think about because we're so focused on the math. And we should be, right? But we're so focused on getting the math right, getting the English right, we're so focused on that love piece, that connecting to that self-awareness and wellness is sometimes missing because we don't have the time, to think about children, or, we're trying to make more money, or we're trying to gain this position. And sometimes, we have to step back and say, hold on, I need to do what's right for my child. And that's leading with love and directing with love and educating with love.
Indeed. We talk about identity. Well, go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just about to say, and there's something about receiving that love from a father too. That's different, and that's special. It's just special. Like, and I think this is another part of the, I guess, like the revolutionary quality of, men, specifically Black men, being involved in the story of homeschooling as we're writing it right now, which is, hey, we get to refashion and reshape the way we think about education. And so if we're doing that, if we're starting from the ground up and rebuilding, in addition to fitting into this larger tradition of it always being a revolutionary act, we can also start with just having the presence of Black men and Black women together educating.
Yes,
because that's revolutionary in every space. Like you look at the data of brick and mortar schools, the number of like Black teachers nationally is like, I don't know, like between 7 and 10%. And then the number of Black men in the classroom K through 12 is like 2%. So most teachers, most classrooms in most people going through American education never have a Black teacher and never have a Black male teacher. Well, if we're moving to this space where we're beginning to educate ourselves and we're looking at homeschooling as an option, then it makes sense that if we're creating a new model, that we don't begin that model with the deficit of, oh, well, the moms are running things and doing it all good and, woo, woo, woo. But, Black men are going to be on the sidelines looking in. To me, that's not going to be the generative model that we want. And that's not to say that, all brothers need to get night jobs. No. It is saying that at some level, the investment that Black men have in their children is not just going to be as provider. It's not just going to be as protector. But at some level, there's something me as a man I'm going to give to my sons and daughters. And check this, I'm going to give to your sons and daughters because we're, whenever that happens, wherever that happens, it's going to happen and it's going to be consistent. Like, so if we're going to breathe new life into this thing, think about education differently than Black men and Black women together in educational spaces. However it is, however we envision it, needs to be a part of that.
And that's beautiful, isn't it? It goes back to the old African proverb, it takes a village, right? But if you finish that proverb, it actually says it takes a village to raise a child. So to create those spaces, to have those spaces where we're investing in each other's children is just so powerful and beautiful. And I love what Jason said, revolutionary as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
You know what's crazy about that whole thing too? Like when you imagine a village, there's a time in the village where the children begin to go out with the men. Like the young men begin going out with the older establishment, and they learn the ways of the forest, or they learn the ways of a warrior, or they learn what it is to build a house, or whatever it is. So, I think a lot of times we ignore the space where you're supposed to be gaining your manly education, right? And however you decide to voice that. But what's also tied to that are things that other things that we oftentimes ignore, like rites of passage, right? Ceremonies of recognition of the transition from childhood to adulthood, rights and responsibilities, like all those kinds of things that need to be that we need to begin to clarify and articulate for our culture too.
Indeed, but bringing it back to the community aspect, because there's a lot of individual, like, individuality that's being pressed right now. Mind your business, stay in your house, don't worry about nobody else's house. I'm gonna protect my family, I'm gonna teach my family, I'm not gonna worry about this family over here, things of that nature. So to hear you go back to the end, for you to share the proverb of it takes a village, because people be like, oh, well, where's my village? It's like, well, if you don't have it, create it, build it, because you need it. You need it. The support is real. The support is needed.
Yeah.
And not on a separate level, especially our Black men, because they I don't know, it's like a rare commodity. Black men Black men seem, that's how they kind of sell it to you. It's like to find a good Black man that wants to do this and help the family, and not only just the family but the community also. It's like y'all are few and far in between, which I don't believe that. I feel like there's an abundance, but I don't think y'all all are on social media showing and proving and doing all that good stuff. But I feel like it's there.
Yeah, brothers at work. Part of it is, I think you hit the nail right on the head in terms of it's a narrative. It's a narrative that's spun for particular reasons. Part of it is convenience. Part of it is the more you hear something, the more true it becomes.
Appears.
And we can also decide. We can also decide what stories we want to tell about ourselves, because it's crazy. Because I'm like, I see so many brothers that are fully all in their families. They struggle each and every day doing the right things, making it work for their families. Some are married, some are not. Some are in, living with their significant others. Some are not. But the majority of Black men that I know and that I've met love their families, love their children, are trying to figure out ways to do the best for them. And that's part of what part of it is. The algorithm does not bend itself to show those things naturally. It's not built for that. It's not built to showcase the means and the practices that we've been using for our survival. It's not built to showcase the success of Black families, because there's nothing sensational about that.
Exactly.
How does that sell in our media?
How about saying there's no selling points there?
It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's not something that supports white supremacy, right? To show that Black families can survive and thrive without the ecosystem of white exploitation and European exploitation. Like that's not part of what's going to get a whole bunch of likes and clicks. But that doesn't mean that there isn't It doesn't mean that those it doesn't mean that those positive images don't exist, right? And again, that's kind of one of the reasons why um, we think our work is important and our witness is important. Because I say work and then I got to take a step back because some of this don't feel like work. I mean, if there was no podcast, when me and Richard got together and we sat down and talked, the conversation would generally be about the same.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The difference is, we get to share. We get to share. Like, I get opportunities using the podcast to just say, these are the people, these are the dudes that I hang around. These are the dudes that I talk to. They all homeschool their children or have homeschooled their children at one point in time. And, we get to talk about the things that are important to us and we get to share about what we learn from each other. I don't profess to be any kind of genius or anything like that. I learn from the people that's around.
Likewise.
And God has seen fit to give us an opportunity to share that with us.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. And that's what's needed, just the sharing part. Like you said, it will happen regardless. Even if you wasn't amplifying your voice, you and Richard would still be having the conversations that y'all have. Y'all would still be building as you are. But now y'all have included the outside communities. And so now it becomes more of an influence. It becomes more of a like revolutionary act. It becomes more of a I don't know, just the leadership in general of acknowledging you all's presence and the work that you're doing because it's being done.
Yeah. You know what I would encourage people to do? Like, assume that we are. Like, assume that when you see Black men in Black spaces, assume that they are.
I love that.
Assume that they are loving each other. Assume that they are. And when you operate with that assumption, you'll see more men doing it. It's not that they aren't doing it. It's just that our perception and our frame of reference says that they're not. So a lot of times, and it's that perception that can shift the narrative in some really weird ways. Like, me and my wife sometimes laugh, and sometimes it's not laughter. But we talk about this moment. We talk about this moment of me taking the kids to the grocery store. So at the time, I got like 4 kids. They all relatively, youngish. And I'm pushing them around the grocery store. And, I get hand claps. Man, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job with these kids, man. They got you babysitting today. Okay. I'm getting the congratulations for doing something that, we would do every day. My wife goes to the same grocery store with kids, and then somebody comes up to her and said, I never had these many kids. Right? And it's that stigma on like what I'm doing. They see what I'm doing as something exceptional, as something, not just something that men are typically doing. And they see my wife doing it and says, "Oh, you should have made other choices because you respect Black motherhood."
Right.
Yes, honey. Yes.
Part of this equation, and one reason it's nice to have both voices in this space, is because it helps us to kind of recalibrate, balance the responsibilities for educating our children and child raising. Is these are things that Black fathers are always doing. We might not do them all in the same ways, but we are totally invested in our children.
Mm-hmm.
You are. Seeing is believing sometimes, but that's that prejudgment that the narratives have been the narratives for as long as they've been the narratives. And that's goes back to what's being taught in the school systems and the curriculum that's being used and the identity that's being shaped. All that goes hand in hand. Because I'm always like, people feel like I'm the most optimistic person there is, and like walking around, I believe anything is possible. I believe there are no limits to anything, and I do see the good in everything. I do. That will always be me. So when people tell me, all Black men doing this or all Black women doing that, or Like, yeah, no, not the ones. Like, first of all, I always want to know how many have you interacted with? Like when you could generalize to say all of something, and you've talked to how many of them? Like, how many are we basing this synopsis or this generalization off of? And then we go from there. But oh, Black people are amazing. Black people in general are amazing. Black men are amazing. Black women are amazing. I don't like the division that's being propagated. Like you said, what's going on with the algorithm as far as the promotion or the marketing of Black men and Black women separation. That's what's doing a lot of harm on the forefront for our younger generations, because we are having our young girls come up and being like, oh, I'm just gonna be a boss. I don't need no man. I don't, like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this on my own. And those are the narratives that we're working to reshape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what our young people are being taught. I mean, that's what they're learning, unfortunately, from the environment that we live in. I mean, we are in a society that's still impacted by the effects of colonization and still impacted by that mindset. And those narratives about Black men aren't around or I don't need anyone. I mean, it's just, that's not something that is a part of us, that never been a part of us, those who are a part of the African diaspora. That's part of what we have learned in this system that we are now in.
Learned, yes.
And it's heartbreaking, right? It's heartbreaking because you hear people say that and all they're doing is reproducing or restating the same language that those who are the oppressors or in the position of oppressors had utilized themselves in order to keep us in a certain position. And we just have forwarded that constantly and continuously. It was funny. I actually did for my fraternity, I represented my fraternity in this Black History Month program, and each fraternity sorority had to submit a presentation. And I did mine on Black fathers. And our fraternity actually won first place, not necessarily because of my great presentation style, no, at all. But we won first place because there was such shock at the information in there, because one of the things that I shared was that studies have shown that if you look at fathers currently, who's more involved in the family, it's Black fathers that are more involved. That's not the narrative we get, even though the research shows that, right? So it's just, it's heartbreaking because we still have to deal with that. We still have to battle that. And that's a narrative that you continue to see in our, unfortunately, our own communities, in our movies, and our songs, and all of that as well. So one of the other reasons why we're here is to say, no, this is not what or who Black men are. This is not what the Black family is. And let us give you a representation of how we have always been. We're not unique. We're just continuing in the line of those who came before us, who supported the family the best way they could within the oppressive confines of the system that they were in.
Yes. 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 I love it all because that's why when I saw what you all were doing, it just hit so much harder because I know you're there. I know this. But to actually be able to reference and say, hey, no, go check out this podcast, Black Men Homeschool, so you can hear and see the individuals that look like you that are doing what you're doing. Because it's not something that's out of the ordinary. It's not something you can't do. It's not something that you need to separate. Because, a lot of people think of homeschool still, and they'll think of a white, two-family household, Christian, like they think on that basis of, okay, that's what you're, who homeschools basically. It's like, no, honey, we out here. Like it's the demographics, everything, like it's all over the place. Everybody can do it. Any and everybody, any living situation, any income, anything. It's all about choice. And the choice is there. These options are there. And I love these conversations. I love to see different organizations, individuals, resources, tools, everything, because it's letting families know they have a choice.
Yeah.
That's what all this comes back to. Like letting individuals know, oh, dang, I could choose to do that. Oh, I could create this. Like you talked about you and your wife wanting to start a school out the gate. Like, oh, yo, we gonna start a school. Like having those type of conversations, letting individuals know that those conversations are to be had. And y'all are still gonna have this school. You already know, right?
We already got it.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
Not like that's shifting mentality. Like homeschool is school. It
Of
is
course.
educating ours. Like it's funny because many of, and I didn't learn this until I started studying before, like many of the schools that were created, liberation schools, the freedom schools that are created, like coming out of the Black liberation movement, a lot of those institutions started as like what we would call homeschool co-ops. People getting their schools out, educating them together, and they eventually grew into larger co-ops, into having physical spaces, into becoming organized as independent schools and school collectives and those kinds of things. So again, like we're fitting prominently into a tradition. Like, look, like we have the freedom to be able to say, if it ain't working, we can take our ball, go home, and do better by ourselves, even if it's for a little while. Maybe I need to pull my kids for a month or two so that we can figure out what's happening, and we can do something. We can do something different. But we have the capacity to do abundantly more than we've been doing because our minds have been open to the possibilities. And there are other people out here who are doing things that will come alongside us in order to make them happen too. Because we're in a climate and environment now where we don't have the luxury of being able to sit back and letting somebody else inundate our children with everything. We always talk about, people throw a side eye towards indoctrination. Oh, they're indoctrinating my kids. They're indoctrinating my kids. It's always indoctrination. We should be indoctrinating our kids. The reason why their indoctrination takes place is because we haven't been as forthright about indoctrinating our kids with the things that we think are important. So again, we take control and we take that as our primary responsibility to sow into them the things that we think are most important. That's both offense and defense for the lives that we want them to
live.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. And the other piece that I would just add, and Jason mentioned this as well, is to know that you're not alone in this, right? The community is out there. People are out there. If I don't feel like you're good in a certain area, subject, or you don't have the knowledge, there's folks out there that's doing this work, homeschooling their children, communities, Black communities that are together, homeschooling together, that can help to support, where you have just a array of tools and resources and educational backgrounds and teachers there that we can build each other up and support each other. So that's one of the things I hear often, that I have to do this, I don't know how to do that, I don't know how to do that. That's okay. You come together. There's folks out there already that's there to support you, walk alongside you, as Jason mentioned earlier.
Indeed. I just got off the phone with a mom last night, telling her and giving her resources to tap into. She's like, I can't do this. Like, I'm trying to make it these next 4 months. And I'm like, Ma, you can do it. Just reach out and get your support. If you don't mind paying for private school and don't mind paying for this curriculum or this class, honey, please understand that your support is there. There's somebody that can help you in any aspect that you're thinking. All things. And that's the purpose of this Homeschool Your Kids podcast, is to share the many resources that are available to assist you on this journey so that you can confidently lead your children's education, because you are the leader regardless. How has this helped y'all relationship and like community as a family, like being able to open the doors for your children to say, hey, my dad is because that's a different conversation. My dad is teaching me. My dad is leading this instruction. Oh, well, my dad said this the other day, or my dad taught me this. Like, how is this helping in building your relationship and the openness of them coming to you with the things that they learn out, without you guys?
You know what's funny? Like sometimes I don't think they see it, right? I I enjoy the fact that I get to I get to teach them something, and they get to learn lessons. And sometimes they grab it, and sometimes they don't. But I don't think they see the wealth of it yet because they haven't had as many experiences to compare it to something else yet.
Gotcha.
My children have mostly just been homeschooled, so this is what they know.
That's the norm.
What I see that's a little bit different. Um, I see the impact of me teaching children in homeschool spaces. Like I teach at a couple of homeschool co-ops, and I teach a literature class with one of the co-ops. And I realized the other day, I was like, yo, they've never had a black male teacher. Like I've been the only one, right? Or maybe they had, one other teacher that maybe did gym with them, but they're not for a content area. And that's kind of a whole nother bad form of conversation. But them receiving knowledge, intellectual knowledge from a black man is really important because there aren't that many spaces in media or out here, and they don't necessarily see black men giving intellectual knowledge. They'll see them as captains of industry. They'll see them as great in athletics. They'll see them as great musicians. And they might see them as influencers, but just in terms of giving them intellectual information, they don't always see that. But and so I had one kid who actually said, "Yo, who just told me thank you just last week." She said,
nice.
"Thank you for teaching us all this kind of stuff," and she's a phenomenal artist, right? And it was Black History Month, so she was doing all kinds of Black History Month. And so she drew this for me. Right?
Oh wow, Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, she drew that for me because she was like, "Oh, that's I appreciate you." And so it's nice seeing that in other. Sometimes you'll get validation from other people's children that you don't get from your own.
Right.
Familiarity breeds contempt. So
yes.
it just is what it is. But one
Indeed.
thing for my own children that I get, and being a teacher, I see this is they will wrestle with intellectual questions with me. So if they were just had to do it all at school, and I came and to ask them about, yo, so what you doing? They would say, fine. How are you doing in school? Fine. But one thing that's been nice is I get to be the recipient of seeing how their minds are working on ideas, because they got to come to me and we gotta wrestle together with different ideas. That's been one huge benefit of being able to teach my children. I can see what's going in, and I can see what's coming out in terms of their thoughts and the way that they speak and the way they're thinking about the world. Because, with kids that just go to school, you just kind of like, they're like, fine, how things going, fine. And then you hear them talking, it's like, where this coming from? Yo, what are y'all talking about? What y'all learning in school?
Right.
And I don't necessarily have that issue, because they're actually engaging with me in what we call the work. Whatever they're reading, whatever they're wrestling with.
Nice. So the conversations are open. You all are talking. You talk.
Yeah, we're talking more. And I don't want to give the impression that my kids are like an open book and they share everything with me. Nah, they still surly. They still temperamental. They still got their issues. They still closed mouth about a whole bunch of stuff. But in the midst of all this, I get these glimpses of beauty and these glimpses of insight from how they're viewing the world that I don't know if everybody gets. Because, so that's
nice.
That makes it worth it. Some days it does.
Some days.
There's a joy of being present. in your child's education, and just being present there, to have those discussions and conversations. Um, to answer the question you have, similarly, I don't know exactly how they respond, but I also would agree. I think it's because my children don't know what it's like, um, for them. So like I wasn't homeschooled and I didn't have
Mm.
that type. So I know what it's like, right? I know the difference. And I had to remind myself that they don't know the difference. Cause I'm like, don't y'all, I mean, this is great. We're here together. And they're like, what are you talking about? Right. Because they're used to that.
Yeah.
That's what they're used to. They grew up with it. They fully understand that. But just being present and hearing from them and having those opportunities to see their educational growth, to hear things stated to you that you have shared with them, but then
Mm.
also to see them in some ways outdo you at times.
Mm.
So, give you an example, my children and I, we like to play a trivia game, online, and all this, states and different geography and literature and all that. And I have to admit that I have not been winning. I think I might. We have played quite a few games. I have been on a pretty long losing streak now, but it's
Mm.
beautiful to know that that's because part of the reason is because the initial investment, or the continuous
Yeah.
investment, not just initial, but the continuous investment, that of course not just myself, my wife, our community, you know our village has had on them, that they have been able to take their education to a level where in some ways they're outshining me when it comes to facts and different things and trivia, and they like to mess with me afterwards. But that's just a beautiful thing to have that type of interaction and relationship.
Of course. And what y'all both basically have said that y'all have broken generational curses. Um, y'all have created new generational traditions. Y'all have
That's the hope.
changed the narrative.
That's the hope. That's the hope. We still in the middle of this thing. Like
We're still in the middle. It's
we
still
speak,
early. It's still early. No, but this is a conversation like I
hey, we speak of things as if they are, but the struggle is real over here. I ain't finna sugarcoat nothing. Like, well, you raising teenagers, you raising
Amen.
kids, you trying to, we're doing it in a different way, so we're not always getting the support, and hats off to all the sisters out here that's out here homeschooling, because
Yes.
it's not easy for you. God bless you. You are in our prayers, because none of this is easy. Like it is hard. And then when the kids, like I said, I don't see myself as a genius. I don't necessarily see my kids as geniuses either. Like they got creative, they got genius in them. But some days you ain't seeing it. You just not seeing it. And then don't even blame the kids. It's like, what am I doing?
right.
Maybe I should have had them at least in third period math. Or I mean, what's happening,
That's
right?
right.
I'm blessed to have a math teacher in the house, and I recognize when
Indeed.
I has that. But my point is just that it's not easy, and then the questions and the doubt coming to mind. But one of the things that gives me peace is that at the very least we can say that, hey, we chose this hard. We chose this one. We chose this one. And we can say that, whatever the successes, whatever the failure, the buck kind of stops with us. And that's important
Indeed.
to be able. That's important to be able to say. When my kids get older and they gonna have the, we always talk about having the talk with our kids. The talk with the kids. But then when our kids get older, they become adults. There's this other talk when the kids actually tell the parents what they really think about how they grew up and they was raised. So
Right.
I start thinking about that talk, right? And they come back and they tell me all the things that I got wrong and all the things I
Mm.
messed up on. At the very least, I can say, yeah, it was me. It was all on me. I'm not gonna say, hey, I put you in the hands of somebody who never even cared about you and they
Mm.
hurt you, and now we're gonna have to grieve that together. At least I can take responsibility for the mistakes that I made, and also celebrate the accomplishments and the good things too.
Yes, and also don't recognize it as things that you got wrong. That's a conversation I was having last night also. There's no right or wrong with this. This is all an experience. This is all a growing like experience that you have to go through and figure out for your own, because none of these kids come out, with a manual attached to them like, hey, this is how I best function. This is what I need. This is what I'm going to eat. Like, there's none of those guidelines given to you off out the gate. Like, none of that comes to you.
You're absolutely right. But see, I think this is one of those differences between the way men and women think about it. Because men will read wins and losses.
Okay.
And I think that's okay.
Okay. And that is
okay to just acknowledge that, you got some stuff right and you got some stuff wrong. There's some stuff that just needs to be fixed. There's some stuff that you can't fix. You just got to leave it.
But things you could have done better.
And get the lesson. It's not the loss, it's a lesson. And you got to keep it moving. You got to keep it moving forward. But then I also, I take a little bit of umbrage with people who present their homeschool lives as if, man, all these lessons are great. It's all perfect. And it's all, come on, y'all. Y'all know.
No, by no means. I talk about them Instagram pictures all the time. No, by no means.
The struggle. Yeah. So I say all that not to denigrate the process, but lift it up as encouragement. Just saying that the failures and the mistakes are going to happen, and we are all imperfect, but we're also incredibly adaptive. That's one of the great things about children. They are adaptive, and they can roll with all kinds of stuff, especially if they're being loved through the process.
Indeed.
Children, there's something about the forgiveness of children. Even if we're missing, if we're loving them through the process, it's going to be okay. And we'll learn together.
Indeed.
One of the biggest tricks of the devil, and one of the biggest tricks of white supremacy is the idea that we're supposed to be doing it all. That we're supposed to do it all. And the reality is that we're not. We're not.
Not at all.
We're not supposed to be doing it. We're not going to educate our children and get them to a better place mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, if we take on the attitude that we're supposed to do it all, do it by ourselves. That just simply cannot be the truth, right? We're supposed to build community. We're not supposed to be buying into some system of American rugged individuality and exceptionalism that says that I'm the only one that can make this household work. No, that's why we need one another, men and women. That's why we need community, the gathering of the village.
Yes, sir. You better say it again for the people in the background. For the people in the back. Say it again. Oh, community is needed. Support is needed. This is not a journey to do alone at all. None of it. Life in general, not just homeschooling, but life in general was not meant to be done alone. So reach out. Please reach out. Gentlemen, I don't want to hold y'all too far into this afternoon, even though I still have more questions, but I'm going to go ahead and ask, how can we find Black Men Homeschool?
Go ahead, tell them, Jason.
So you can find us at our podcast, Black Men Homeschool. We're on all the podcast platforms, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, so you can find us there. You can also find us on Instagram. You can find us on our Facebook page, Black Men Homeschool. For both of those, you can find us at Twitter, Be More Homeschool. So you can find us, or Be Men Homeschool. Sorry about that.
Nice. Okay, and before I let y'all go, from each one of you, I would like to, it's not often that I get to talk to the Black dads or just dads in general. I won't even say just Black dads, but dads in general, about their journey in homeschooling. 3 things that you would like to tell them that, will make this a little more gentle for them. I ain't gonna necessarily say, oh, make it easier, but just a little, maybe soften some of them blows that Jason is adamant about making sure we recognize that they can come along with this process.
Ain't no blows whatsoever. Bruh, you out there and you love your kids. You already in your mind because you are a sufficient black man out there. You already know in your head what you want your kids to do. All I would say is just write those things down and decide when you're gonna teach it to them. That's it. That's it. It doesn't have to be you gotta quit your job, find something else to do. Maybe it's every third Tuesday. Maybe it's on the weekends. But just be consistent. Decide what those one or two things are, and just have a plan that you can consistently follow through with. It could be maybe an hour out of the week, maybe two, maybe it's a couple of hours out of the month. But if you're consistent, it is going to take root and take hold, and your child will always live by the lessons that you teach. Just be consistent.
So you only giving them one, Jason? Is that what you're saying?
I thought that was like I thought it
No,
was
you
a
need two
Oh,
more.
good.
I heard be
I thought
consistent.
I thought
It was good, Richard, but it
I'll
wasn't
break
like
it
he
down. I'll
didn't.
break it down. Choose something to teach them. You know, choose a time when you're going to teach it to them, and then be consistent.
All right. You
Yeah,
got it. You got it.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah. So I don't have much to add to that. I would just say, remember that this is a beautiful journey that you're on together with your family, that you have this opportunity to be on this journey with them, and that you get to guide them along in the journey that you are taking them, that you have decided to take them in. So as long as you see this as a beautiful journey and see this as an opportunity and see this as your opportunity, I think you'll turn out fine. Everything, it won't be perfect, but it'll be at the best that you can do. And as we already shared, don't forget there's a village out here for you to help support you as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. I appreciate you gentlemen so much. This is definitely means a lot to me. Y'all gracing my platform to share your platform and just to share what you do in general, your journey, and to change the narrative. I love what you all are doing, and I thank you. I thank you. I appreciate you. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep showing them like we out here. Like let them know. Like this
Well,
ain't new.
that's right back at you. We appreciate you and what you're doing, to
Of course.
voice the homeschool, let people know that this is possible, is we can do it,
Yes,
and that
sir.
there's a benefit to doing it, especially as Black families. There's such a benefit for us to do it as well. So thank you for what you do and allowing us to be a part of your platform.
Of course, of course. Families, reach out. Just continue to find the resources that work for you and your family. And remember that this is, as Jason and Richard have, co-signed with me, this is not a journey you have to do alone. Okay. Build the community, find the support. It is there. I promise once you start walking your path and you are in divine alignment, everything that you need will align in your path and you just be bumping into. I promise we can't go nowhere without bumping into a homeschool family. They everywhere. Like they out here. We out here. So understand that it's not a solo dolo trip. So build it and remember to homeschool your kids.